All right, welcome to the Ironwood Gym. Hopefully you've gotten the chance to catch out some of my recent episodes on training the chain. And the first episode, part one of the Train the Chain series, discussed what the posterior chain is and why it's so important to train the posterior chain. Part two discussed more of how to train the low back, how to train the hamstrings, and I started to talk about the glutes a little bit, and I don't think I did a great job as far as really giving a good idea of how to train the glutes. So we're going to hit on that today, just to kind of make sure that I'm hitting what I want to hit, and then I'm going to move into how to train the rest of the chain, or how to train the rest of the posterior. So more specifically, talking about the traps, talking about the lats, and gonna go into the triceps a little bit. So looking back to the glutes, okay, and I mentioned that I believe I mentioned I felt a lot of the stuff that's out there for the glutes tends to be a little bit too gimmicky to get really solid results, okay? Just too small of exercises that really don't have a lot of bang for their buck. And while they do target the glutes, I just don't think you really get a lot out of them in terms of strength development, which is what we're really going for when we're trying to improve performance or improve maximum strength, whether it be in sports or in maximum strength as far as powerlifting, weightlifting, strongman, things of that nature. So what I did say that I really did like for, and first understand, a lot of the big posterior chain exercises already hit the glutes fairly significantly if you do them in a manner which will recruit the glutes. And I did go into some of that, you know, with the RDLs and with the good mornings, actually focusing on turning your hips and activating your glutes to initiate that movement and even finish the movement. Pull-throughs hit the glutes very hard if you learn to do the exercise with your glutes versus trying to do everything with your low back. And a lot of this boils down to, in some of these exercises, is knowing how to fire the glutes so that they are working along with the other muscles that you're working, versus just doing the exercise with the low back, which is what a lot of people will do. A reverse hypers is another great example of that if you know how to activate your glutes to initiate that kick and even squeeze at the top with your glutes are going to get a lot out of that versus trying to do everything with your low back. So basically my point is a lot of those exercises already recruit the glutes, the RDLs, the hamstrings, glute ham raises to lock the glutes and hips in place, reverse hypers, even back extensions or back raises. All of those utilize the glutes fairly significantly, and I wouldn't change how I train them other than focusing on utilizing the glutes. Same sets and reps, same frequency per week. So then what I went into is I talked about how walking lunges are my go-to if I'm really thinking glutes and I want something in the program to target the glutes. That is going to be dumbbell walking lunges. I do prefer dumbbells over the barbell. I think it gives an added level of difficulty that you will get a lot more out of. As far as the glutes specifically, I couldn't tell you whether you're going to be able to handle more weight with a barbell. But I couldn't tell you which one is better at necessarily strengthening the glutes. I prefer the dumbbells. And I typically would do that for higher reps. About 8 reps is as low as reps as I would ever go. 15 is pretty much the highest I would ever go. So that range, 8 to 15 reps per set. Generally speaking, about 3 sets in a workout. If I'm doing sets of 15, I may only do 2 because I'll probably be shot if I'm really pushing it on those 2 sets. I'll pretty much be done and not have the desire to do the third set. So that's really where I'm going to fall, is about 2, maybe 2, most likely 3 sets, 8 to 15 reps per set. And that is counting per leg, not total. So if we're doing sets of 15, it's 15 for the right leg, 15 for the left leg. I don't stop in the middle and put my foot down. I step all the way through, step to step. Okay. Beyond dumbbell walking lunges, really the only other thing that I would put in there that I feel has any benefit would be just regular stationary lunges where you step out and then you drive back. I do feel those work. I don't think they're nearly as good as the walking lunges, and the sets and reps would pretty much be the same. And I would put these in on, this really doesn't matter. My preference was always to put them in on my squat day. So that would have been Monday for me. And I don't think it really makes that big of a difference. Now they do cause a lot of soreness. So if you have a job where your soreness is really going to affect your job the next day, you might want to put it towards the end of the week where you know you're going to have a day or 2 off before you have to go back to work. That's just from personal experience. Sometimes you want to save those things that cause a lot of soreness, which walking lunges do cause a lot of soreness, but putting those later on in the week, so even though I'm more fatigued by that point, I don't have to worry about that affecting my job or something that I may have to be doing during the week. All right, so let's move on, and now I want to get into what I really intended this episode to be on, and that's training the rest of the chain and how I would do it. Again, this is not, there are plenty of other ways to do it, but this is how I've done it and what I feel is most effective. So we're going to start out with the lats. We're going to start there and work our way up. The lats, we know, have 2 main functions, and that is 1, pulling from a horizontal position, and 2, pulling from a vertical position. So your horizontal positions are going to be your rows. It can be barbell rows, it could be what everyone likes to call as pin lay rows. I learned that same thing many years ago, and no one even knew what it was, or definitely didn't call it pin lay rows. And yes, we are going back about 15 years. So prior to that, no one knew what a pin lay row was, or whatever. People put these names on things all the time, and I don't know that they really need to be. So yeah, your pin lay rows, your barbell rows, your seated rows, dumbbell 1-arm rows, dumbbell 2-arm rows. Another one that I really like, and I started playing around with it, and then I discovered that, people on T Nation are talking about this. I had no idea, and it really happened right in the same time frame, is the seal row, where you're laying on a bench and pulling the weight up, and you set the bench up a little bit higher so your hands, or the dumbbells or barbell or whatever you have, doesn't touch the ground, and you pull from that position. So you're laying flat, perfectly horizontal, and then pull up from there. Another exercise that I have really liked is that I set the bench up so my head is lower than my hips. I'm still laying face down, just like a seal row, but essentially I'm in a decline. Okay, so my head is actually I generally go with about a 6-inch difference. It could be a 4 to 6 inch difference is decent enough. You could set it up more than that, but you don't want it to be super steep where it feels like you're going to fall off the bench. But then I do my rows from there. Now, when I'm doing my rows, and those are just some examples of exercise variation. So for your execution, I do like it to be as strict as possible. I don't like a lot of body English when you're doing your barbell bent over rows and pulling that entire body. Same thing with your dumbbell rows. I like it to be more strict. I feel you're going to get a lot more out of it. You can't handle as much weight, okay? But you're gonna get more out of it from a strength perspective and from a size perspective as far as putting mass on. The other thing I want to hit on is technique, okay? So besides just being, or along with that part of the technique as far as being strict, but along with that is that when I do my row, I'm actually trying to pull the bar or dumbbell. Usually I do this with dumbbells more than I worry about it with the barbell, but I'm trying to actually pull it back towards my hips. So I'm going to try to show this really quick. I don't know how this is going to go. Okay, so if you see me here, I know you can't see my entire body, but if I'm bent over, instead of just pulling the dumbbell straight up, okay, I'm trying to pull that dumbbell back towards my hips. Okay, I'm still getting a good range of motion, but in doing that, I'm going to involve less of my traps, and it's okay for the traps to work along with the lats. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not even saying pulling straight up is a bad idea. I'm just saying I'm really trying to focus more on the lats. So I'm trying to give the direction of pull a little bit more towards my hips as I pull my elbow up. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Try it out. Okay, does it limit how much you can handle? Yes, but you're getting a stronger contraction in the lats in the process. Okay. And I do that primarily with my dumbbell one-arm rows and my seal rows. Oh, and here's another exercise variation that I forgot to mention, and I do it with that as well, is a dumbbell incline row, where I'm going to be face down on an incline bench but my head is now at the higher end. And I generally do that on one of your, not a super steep incline, but definitely not a shallow incline, kind of right in the middle. And I'm going to pull basically the same way. I'm rowing the dumbbells back and trying to get those elbows up as high as possible, with the direction of pull being more back or more towards my hips than straight up. So that covers the technique. I'm not going to try to break down every single exercise and how to do it. I just want to throw a couple technique pointers out there, and that was: one is be strict, two, give the direction of pull a little bit more to your hip versus straight up. Okay, so how do I train these? So when I was competing, I only trained my lats twice a week. Okay, and I always wanted, I'd even do it for certain periods of time. I always wanted to train both types of lat movements twice a week. So twice a week for horizontal pulling, twice a week for vertical pulling. But when I was competing, my whole thought process revolved around the squat and the deadlift on those 2 days. And yes, the lats are extremely important for your squat and deadlift, but I felt there were other things that I needed to focus on my squat and deadlift days that took precedence over additional lat work. So consequently, when I was competing, I would only train my lats on my upper body days. And I would do my horizontal pulling on my Wednesday, which is my primary bench day. My Sunday, which was my kind of bench assistance day, but if maybe a dynamic effort day, it could have been a overhead and incline day, but that day I would do my vertical pulling. And pretty much for vertical pulling, which I did not go over any exercise variations, but I'll throw that out here in just a second. That was almost always gonna be pull-ups of some nature, whether that was neutral grip, an overhand grip, a wide grip. I very rarely did chin-ups. I just prefer the overhand grip. I think I get more out of it than going underhand. But that's my own personal preference. So that was how I would put that in. Let's step back just a moment. Let's get some variations in there for the lats. And I've used all of these. So lat pulls. Everyone knows what lat pulls are. And I would do all different grips. I would get that little V-bar. I would go with a regular wide lat pull grip. I'd do close grip. I would do underhand grip. I'd do all of them. I didn't do a ton of lat pulls when I was competing, even though I think it's a great exercise. It's a very simple exercise, but I do think it has a lot of advantages. Mostly, I would do that in early phases of training. As I got to later phases of training, and most of the time, actually, I would spend doing pull-ups. And I like to do weighted pull-ups, so I would get down to doing even doubles and triples for my pull-ups in training as heavy days. Okay, so what did I do sets and reps wise? It was basically bodybuilding or your typical assistance work. For my rows, pretty much always between 5 to 10 most of the time. In earlier phases of training, I was doing sets of 12 to 15 or 10 to 15. But as it got heavier, I would get into those heavy sets of 5. Probably never more than about 4 sets. And this is back when I was competing. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing now here in just a minute. But probably usually 3 to 4 sets. I did put a lot of stock into building my lats, so I was going to push that a little bit beyond just normal assistance work. I wasn't going to do just 2 or 3 sets. I was going to push it definitely 3, maybe 4. And I might even throw a down set in there at the end of that for a 4th or 5th set. For my vertical lats, if I was doing lat pulls or something with the cable, pretty much everything was going to be 10 reps or higher. Okay. When I went to pull-ups, everything was pretty much 8 reps or lower. And I would get all the way down, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, all the way down to doubles. Occasionally I would toss in a rep set in there on pull-ups, which I would get anywhere from 12 to 15. I think my best was around 17 reps, and that was done at the body weight of about 230 pounds. So not over the top fantastic, but still pretty decent. When I got down into those doubles, I started putting weight on as soon as I could, and I would get all the way down into doubles as far as training. And occasionally I would test out my pull-ups and just see how much weight I could handle for a single rep. So that's when I was competing, 2 days per week. Horizontal on Wednesday, my main bench day, vertical on my bench assistance day, which was on Sunday. Looking to where I am now, I wish I would have changed and trained lats 4 days a week. I just think that looking back at it and seeing the results I'm getting now, even though I'm older, in mid-40s at the time, and I'm getting better results with my lats now than I did when I was younger. And I think training the lats 4 days per week is extremely beneficial. 2 days vertical, 2 days horizontal. And I on my Monday and Wednesday workouts, so Monday is my squat day, Wednesday is my bench day. Those are my high volume days for my lats. Okay, so high volume on Monday is going to be high volume vertical pulling. So I'm going to focus more on almost always lat pulls. I may toss some isometric or eccentric stuff in there, but I'm going to be doing up to 5 sets of 10 on a high volume day. It generally ranges 3 sets of 15. I waive it. 3 sets of 15 on week 1, 4 sets of 12 on week 2, and 5 sets of 10 on week 3. And then I'll back up, I'll change the variation, and I'll go through it again. So that would be my Monday. My heavy day would be Friday for my vertical pulling. That would be my deadlift day. On that day is always going to be some sort of pull-up. I'll do overhand grip, different widths. I don't have access to the neutral grips anymore, so but different widths on the overhand grip pull-up. Sometimes I'll toss in a chin-up. I still just prefer the overhand grip. I think I get more out of it. as far as my lats go. And I range anywhere from, I very rarely go over 5 reps. My vertical pulling is going to be pretty heavy. So it's going to range, and I'll do, sometimes I get down to 3, but it's usually going to be around 4, maybe 5 sets. And everything is going to be 5 reps or less. So I'll get down to heavy singles, generally heavy doubles, all the way to heavy sets of 5. And I try to train, I might have a set or 2 kind of light, and then everything else is going to be pretty heavy. Rows, I take a higher volume approach. My volume day on Wednesday is going to be the same as my volume day for vertical pulling. 3 sets of 15, 4 sets of 12, 5 sets of 10. For Sunday would be my heavy day for my rows. I pretty much only have 3 exercises that I will do on my heavy day. Dumbbell, 1-arm rows, barbell bent over rows, and the pin lay row, which I still just call a barbell bent over row with a pause on the floor. But that's pretty much all I'm going to do. The heaviest or the lightest I will go will basically be an 8 rep max. Okay, so heavy sets of 8. And I'll probably be doing, again, about 4 sets per workout. But the heaviest I go, unlike the vertical pulling, the heaviest I will go will be heavy sets of 5. I really feel that your technique just gets completely thrown out the window the heavier you go. So sets of 5, I can still manage my technique fairly well, or actually very well. Once I go below that, I'm going to start to add some body English to it, and I want to stay away from that. Before we move on to the traps, I'm going to throw one more exercise variation out there, and that is the croc row. I used to do these, and I actually really liked them. I would just post my hand up on we had dumbbells that was just about our dumbbell racks were just about the right height. I would post my hand up on a very heavy dumbbell and pull with the other one, and I would rotate my body as I pulled. I really liked those, and I liked doing them for very high reps. So I would warm up with sets of 10, maybe 2, 3, 4 warm-up sets. Then I'd grab a very heavy weight, and I would just knock out reps. Pretty much going to failure or very close to failure. And that would usually put me, 12 would probably be the fewest reps I would get. Up to about 25 would be the highest I would get, and it would just depend on what weight I selected for that day. I like that, but at the same time, I think you need to be more developed before you start doing something like that. If you are a beginner to middle range novice or middle range intermediate, you probably don't need to be doing that. Save that for when you're more advanced. So if you're someone that's been training for probably 15 years, 12 to 15 years or more, I think croc rows are fine. But for your younger people that have been lifting for only anything less than 10 years, definitely stay away from that. Stay with something that's definitely, and follow a more strict technique. All right, so moving on to the traps. Again, I'll do what I did when I was competing and what I'm doing now. The traps, to me, need to be trained with higher reps. Doing shrugs for sets of 5, I think, is a waste of time. But that's my personal opinion. The problem with shrugs is they take so little amount of time that I don't think you get the time under tension that you need. Think about it. A shrug is just there and there. All right? If you're listening to this on Spotify, I just shrugged my shoulders. I went through the entire range of motion in the time it took me to say there twice. Both concentric and eccentric. I think you need more time to develop your traps. And you need to do that by doing more reps. So to me, anything less than 10 reps is a waste of time. That's my personal opinion. I would add more reps, 10, 15, 20 reps per set, and never really any less than that. Traps are another thing that one of the few things, I don't use straps a lot. Okay, I had certain exercises that I would definitely grab straps for, but shrugs I almost always grab straps for. And again, I like to err on the more strict side versus using a lot of hips and legs to get that bar moving. Now certainly, if you're a weightlifter, you may want to utilize some hip drive or some leg drive because that is going to mimic your clean technique or your snatch technique a little bit more. But if you're looking at powerlifting or strongman, I think strict is better. And yes, I do absolutely think there's a good place for shrugs for a powerlifter or strongman, or even a weightlifter. So, what day did I put it on? Typically would be in there on my deadlift day. So, and I would do it later in the workout, which was kind of a pain looking back at it, because I would have already deadlifted. I already did all my deadlift workout, and then I'd come back over and load the bar back up after having it completely stripped down to do shrugs. So, but I do think it made a difference in my deadlift and how much weight I could handle without losing that posture in my upper back as far as my deadlift went. Other things that I would do for that I would consider trap work, even though they are focusing on other things, but that would be things like my rear delts, specifically if I had my palms facing inward. So when I pulled my hands out to the side, my rear delts or my reverse flies, I would get more trap activation with that. That's not a big exercise. It's going to put a lot of mass on your traps, but it will help develop your traps. Okay, don't forget about those sort of things, your rear delt work, because your rear delts and your traps work together, pulling those shoulder blades, pulling your shoulder blades together, pulling your arms out. I'm saying this all wrong right now. Basically, yeah, they work together to do that movement. It will carry over to your trap size. Shrugs are better for putting on the most amount of traps, but that only works your traps from an elevation standpoint. Doing your posterior delts or your band pull aparts will work your traps from a more of a retraction standpoint, where you're just pulling your shoulder blades back together. Okay, your traps don't just function from a elevation, from elevating your shoulders. They also retract, they also depress. So your band pull aparts, your I just said it a dozen times, your posterior, your rear delt work, your reverse flies, that will work it very well from that retraction. For depression, I would go with straight arm dips, and that's get up in a dip rack, have your arms locked, let yourself sink as much as you can without bending your arms. Just let yourself sink and then push with those lower traps, keeping your arms straight, and get up as high as you possibly can. Okay, that's going to work your lower traps. I did that regularly for very high reps, but I would only do it probably once or twice a week. I usually did it on my bench days as part of my shoulder warm-up before I benched. The rear delts I would also do on my bench days, usually later on in the workout. Looking at it now, I still do the same thing, but I do it with a much higher volume. So I do get up to doing around 5 sets per workout of rear delts, usually once a week. Another exercise to throw in there would be your face pulls. These I would toss in again on your bench days, probably later in the workout, and with very high reps. I don't care if you're doing them with face pulls with a cable or with a band, either one. But I always do my face pulls, and it doesn't have to be like this. I always do my face pulls where the band or cable is attached up high and I'm pulling it down to the top of my forehead. You can do them where the band is straight across or where the band is down low. I like it from up above because I'm going to get some depression as well as some it's both depression and retraction, which is going to go a lot further for injury prevention than your elevation will. If you're doing it where the band is attached down low or the cable is attached down low and you're pulling it up, still a decent exercise, but it's going to be almost entirely elevation. And so elevation is good for developing your traps. It will help out with your deadlift, but we tend to tend to too much be too tight up top, okay? And we need to learn to let those shoulders relax, so I don't want to overdo it. And that's something I've probably migrated to more, and that's why I don't do as many shrugs as I used to, and actually I haven't done shrugs in a while. But if I was competing again, I would have heavy shrugs in there, regardless of what all the functional movement specialists say about too much trap elevation, because I do think it carries over very well. Okay, so that's enough on traps. Hit the lats, we hit the traps, so let's focus on the triceps. I have always struggled. I do not have big arms. Okay, I never had big arms. I trained my triceps very hard, but I struggled to gain tricep size. They're not horribly small, but compared to your big benchers, I did not have triceps. So for the triceps, there's a number of movements you can do. There's a lot of stuff that I would just toss out right away. So I'll give you my top exercises. My number one tricep exercise is going to be dips. Okay, that's going to be my number one. It's not necessarily the best builder for your bench as you get more advanced. When you're younger, it is. When you're in your first few years of training, up to maybe 10, but definitely the first 5 years of training, your dips will help your bench out quite a bit. As you get more advanced, a lot of people, including myself, start believing that they don't help as much. But we also know there are some of your old-time lifters, I hate to say old-time, but some of the lifters from the past tended to really rely on dips for developing their triceps for their bench. I don't have the perfect answer on that. I just know that I do think the dips are a great exercise. I don't necessarily see the carryover directly to my bench. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. But other great or really good tricep exercises. Skull crushers. Everyone knows it. It's a great exercise. Just try to be strict. Don't let those elbows go out to the side too much. Where you touch on your head, I don't think is a major importance. I generally touch a little bit higher. I think bodybuilders will tend to touch a little bit higher. A lot of powerlifters will actually touch lower. So they'll hold the bar a little bit lower. Instead of holding it up more towards their shoulders, they hold it more over their kind of their lower pecs, upper abs, and then keep their elbows there. Then it ends up touching around their chin or their mouth. Not a big deal. I do also like dumbbell skull crushers. I call them lying tricep extensions, but same thing. I think that's another great exercise. Doing them with the dumbbell will take some of the stress off your elbow. So if the barbell or a curl bar hurts your elbows, then stop doing it with the barbell or the curl bar and do them with the dumbbells. If that hurts your elbows, then we need to probably take a step back and evaluate what we need to do to fix that. But the dumbbells, having that neutral grip instead of the pronated grip, tends to take some of the stress off that elbow and still does a good job of developing the triceps. A variation of that, okay, that was probably popularized out of Westside Barbell was the dumbbell rolling tricep extensions. I've seen it many times done on the floor, which I have never done. I like to just do it on the bench, but it's the same. It starts out like a skull crusher, but I'm going to let my elbows drift down a little bit, roll the dumbbells back, and then I pull my elbows and extend at the same time. Some people describe that as throwing the hands. If you do it right, you'll feel a lot more stress in your triceps. Okay, that supposedly, and I haven't done a ton of these, I have done them, I've been doing them more lately. But what a lot of the big benchers that came out of Westside Barbell would say is that really carried over to their bench very well. Another really good exercise is the flared arm extension. That's how I learned the name back many years ago. Dave Tate was writing about it and he called it flared arm extensions. Several years after that, people started calling it Tate press. Now people are saying they're called Williams extensions or Williams press or something like that. But basically all it is I prefer to do them on an incline. You can do them on a flat bench as well. Hold the dumbbells. You can put them together or you can hold them apart. I find that it works differently and they're both good. Okay, so sometimes I do it one way, sometimes I do it the other way. But you're going to let the dumbbells fold in. Okay, you're going to bring them all the way to your chest, and then you're going to extend your elbows from there. So if you're watching this, listening to this on Spotify, then I apologize that you can't see this, and maybe I'll do an exercise video on this at some point. But basically, your elbows are out to the side. Okay, you're going to come in with the dumbbells, so the dumbbells are coming to your chest, and your elbows are going out. Okay, your elbows are going to go out to the side, and then from there you're going to extend again. I've never had a problem with my elbows with this exercise, but I have had some pain in my forearms, just below the elbow, just below the elbow, but in my forearm, not in the elbow. But this is an exercise I really like to have in there to help develop my bench. I think it's a great exercise. Like I said, you can do it where you keep the dumbbells together and they are touching throughout the entire movement on the chest. Both ends of the dumbbells would be touching. And then as you come up, you rotate so only one end of the dumbbell is touching. Or you can do it where you bring the dumbbells together on your chest, and then as you extend up, the dumbbells actually come completely apart. I feel the contraction in my triceps feels different with both of those, and it's good with both of those. So I like to do it both ways. Okay, from a programming perspective on the triceps. Oh, one more exercise that I want to put in there. Push downs. I'm not a big fan of cable push downs. I do them sometimes, but I don't think that it's the best exercise or the most effective exercise. Usually when I do cable push downs, I'm doing either high reps or something crazy with high reps. I'll do steps, so I'm adding weight every single set until I can't go anymore. Or I'll do strip sets where I don't rest in between these sets, steps or strip sets, either one. Where I'll start maybe a weight that I can do for 10. I'll do it for 10, I'll take weight off, I'll do it for 10, I'll take weight off, I'll do it for 10. I may get up to doing 50, 60 reps like that. Same thing with the steps. I'll do the same basic concept, getting up to doing 50, 60 reps basically in one set. But I just don't think that the cable push down is that great for either strength or size. Could it be effective? Yes, but it's just not the best. I would rather go with different forms of extensions. But band push downs I really do like because you can do them. They lend themselves to high reps, and I'm talking up to 100 reps per set. Generally don't go below 20. Sometimes I do get down around 12, 15 reps. But but generally I will push that higher, and I'll get up to around 100 reps per set. I like these because of how much blood you can flush into your elbow and into your triceps with them. And combined with the fact that because the band does not have as much tension when you're at the top, or when you have your hands up closer to your shoulders or your chest, and it adds tension as you go down, it's not putting as much negative stress on your elbow. Okay, so this tends to work very well if you have elbow issues. And it allows you to get a good contraction in your tricep as well as flush a lot of blood in to help with the healing process. Okay, so from a programming perspective, I do this. What I prefer to do is basically the same as my lats. I have a heavy day and I have a high volume day. My high volume day, depending upon where I'm at in my training, it may be a day just like my lats where I'm doing 3 sets of 15, 4 sets of 12 the next week, 5 sets of 10 the third week, and then I'll switch up the exercises and do something different. Or it could be a day, if I'm in the early phases of training, where I'll do a somewhat heavy movement, maybe something like dips, for somewhat high volume. Okay, I know I'm not being real concrete here, but I may do, for dips, I may do like three or 4 sets of 8, or I may do some isometrics, or I may do some negatives, some eccentrics. Maybe even 3 sets of 10. And then, this is in the same day, I will do band pushdowns later in the workout for very high reps. Okay, where I'm pushing 3 sets of 20, 2 sets of 50, a set of 100, maybe 3 reps, 3 different bands in the same set for a total of 100 reps, where I'm getting like 30 something with, or 15 to 20 with the first band, 20 to 30 with the second band, and then finish out the rest of the reps up to 100 with the third band. But in that day, that high volume day, I might be doing 2 exercises. Again, that's only in my early phases of training. After that, it'll just be 1 exercise. For my heavy day, I'll push it generally, sometimes up to sets of 6. But understand at this point, I'm talking tricep specific work. I'm not talking about the close grip bench that I already did, and the bench presses that I already did, or the incline or the overhead pressing that I already did. Okay, which I've already got 2 exercises done prior to doing my tricep work. So on my heavy day, that will be, I might get up to about 4 sets. And never less than 3. So 3 to 4 sets. Probably not going to push it much beyond that. Maybe 5 sets, but that's very rare. My reps will range from 10 down to about 6. Okay, I won't take it beyond 6 as far as increasing weight, because I've already done heavy work with my pressing. And when I'm talking right now about triceps, I'm only talking about tricep mostly specific work. So it's your extensions, your dips. I'm not talking about the pressing exercises such as your close grip benches, your board presses, your floor press, close grip presses off of pins, your overhead pressing, your incline pressing. I'm leaving all that out. That would be an entirely separate conversation or discussion. So that's really sums up my triceps. Heavy day, high volume day, and really push the volume on that volume day. And then the heavy weight, sets of 6 would be about the heaviest I would go, but I would start with generally around sets of 10 and then progress to sets of 6 with the same exercise before changing that exercise. That should do it for this video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Please hit that like button if you like what you're seeing here. Hit subscribe to the channel and invite or share it with other lifters and coaches that you think could get something out of this. But until next time, always be in the pursuit of strength.